Defeat, both he and his government will stay in office for the time being. We shall carry on calmly, he said. But the result is a humiliation for Boris Yeltsin, who had pleaded with the Congress to support Mr. Gaidar and offered it significant concessions as an inducement to do so. President Yeltsin had tried desperately hard to save his Prime Minister, but in the end his efforts were not enough. And this Congress has rejected not only Mr. Gaidar, but also the policies of radical economic reform. Ben Brown, BBC News at the Russian Congress in Moscow.
In Somalia, American Marines have been consolidating their positions after landing in Mogadishu. The Marines encountered no opposition when they landed, and their presence has been welcomed by many Somalis. The first US Marines have now secured the port and runway in the capital, Mogadishu. Troops will next move inland to take control of the airport at Baidoa. From there, the soldiers will establish 3 bases and attempt to secure relief routes to the areas worst affected by the famine.
It was about 5:30 this morning when the main batch of US Marines were brought into Mogadishu Airport and Harbour. Operation Restore Hope, the first time the UN has authorised military intervention for solely humanitarian purposes, is underway. Some 1,800 troops should be in place by the end of the day. And then comes the job of winning hearts and minds. It wasn't a good start.
Hands up, palms up, let's go, palms up, cover me.
On the ground are men whose job it has been to guard the hangars. They were apparently unarmed, but treated in what can only be described a humiliating manner. It took the intervention of UN Commander Imtiaz Shaheen, till now unpopular with many in Mogadishu, to have the men released. It wasn't the only episode that didn't go to plan. Ahead of the main landing, a crack team of US Navy SEALs, trained to work behind the lines, had come ashore to find nothing more hostile than the glare of press cameras. There were even suggestions that the whole operation might have been timed to fit in with prime-time American TV broadcasts. Throughout the day, the movement of men and materiel has gone on without a stop. It'll be like this for a few more days as the Marines establish a logistics base. Eventually, about 30,000 troops could be involved. It took a little over 2 hours for the Marines to secure both the airfield and the port this morning. That was the easy part. Persuading all Somalis that they're here to help will take a lot longer. The toughest challenge will come when trying to disarm the gunmen. For the time being, most weapons have simply been hidden. George Alagaya, BBC News, Mogadishu.
Britain has submitted a revised plan to EC leaders to try to break the deadlock over Denmark's demands for opt-outs on the Maastricht Treaty. The issue is likely to be one of the most difficult on a packed agenda at the EC summit starting in Edinburgh on Friday. The President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, has suggested that if Britain and Denmark delay ratification, then the other 10 countries might have to press on without them.
As final preparations were being made for the summit, there were growing indications that agreement on most issues on the contentious agenda was more likely than not. In an attempt to satisfy the Danes, Britain's new proposals partly reinterpret the Maastricht Treaty, though it leaves open the critical question of how legally binding Denmark's opt-outs would be. On another issue which has risen up the agenda since Maastricht, a new agreement on subsidiarity is said to be close. More widely, a row is expected over future financing, but Britain won't accept demands from some countries that it should accept a lower rebate. The high stakes were being emphasised in Brussels. Jacques Delors said that he hoped that the building of Europe would continue with those who were prepared to share in it, echoing new pressure from Mr. Mitterrand, who said today that even without Britain and Denmark, others would press ahead.
The agenda that we have for Edinburgh is both long and in some respects very, very difficult and complicated indeed. I think we could do it, but I really can't at this stage be optimistic about it.
Senior Foreign Office sources said tonight that they had edged forward on some of the thorniest issues. In the light of the tendency to lower expectations before a summit, that can be taken as a sign of optimism. But because so many of the subjects are interrelated, failure in one could still threaten the whole summit.
In our news broadcast on Monday the 7th of December, we said that two of the largest customers of British nuclear fuels in Germany had begun negotiations to cancel orders worth about £3 billion for services from BNFL's Thorpe reprocessing plant at Sellafield in Cumbria. We accept that no such negotiations have taken place and apologise to BNFL for any damage our report may have caused. In India, more than 600 people have now died in sectarian fighting after militant Hindus destroyed a Muslim mosque in Ayodhya on Sunday. In Calcutta and Bombay, Hindu and Muslim mobs fought each other and clashed with police and soldiers. A number of buildings were set on fire. Police say they were forced to open fire on rioters in order to keep the rival groups apart. A curfew has been imposed in some areas. Tonight's main news again. The Prince and Princess of Wales are to separate, but have no plans to divorce. The palace said there is no reason why the Princess should not become Queen, and the decision has no constitutional implications. And we've just received these pictures of the Princess of Wales arriving home tonight at Kensington Palace. She hasn't made any comment on today's statement from Buckingham Palace, neither has the Prince of Wales. And that's the 9 o'clock news tonight. Newsnight is on BBC2 at 10:30 as usual. But that's the news tonight. Good night.
Good evening. Plans to create up to 1,000 new jobs on the site of a former colliery in Nottingham have been released today. The company carrying out the work says it'll take on former miners and retrain them to learn new skills as construction workers.
The site of the former Babington colliery has been derelict since the pit closed in 1985. Today, British Coal announced that it would be developed into a site for high-tech factories.
I've been talking this morning to a gentleman who is looking for a site for headquarters employing 500 people. So, yes, there are definitely people out there who want this site.
The company carrying out the work says it'll take on up to 50 ex-miners and retrain them as builders. Work is expected to begin early in the new year.
Postal workers in a Leicestershire town are meeting tonight to decide whether or not to end their strike. Mail deliveries and collections have been severely disrupted in Coalville for nearly 3 weeks. The dispute involving 40 staff is over a plan to get postmen and women to work fixed shifts. They're considering new proposals from management tonight. 70 staff at Melton Mowbray are also on strike. The Union of Communication Workers says the action could spread to Leicester, where preparations are going ahead for a ballot. The police in Leicester say they're stepping up patrols in parts of the city following arson attacks on Hindu temples elsewhere in the country. But they're stressing that they have no indications at the moment that any problems will occur locally. The move follows an arson attack on a temple in Derby early on Monday morning. The ground floor was completely burnt out. A caretaker was slightly injured as he escaped the fire. Football now, and we have just one result for you tonight. In the GM Vauxhall Conference, Boston United 3, Macclesfield 1. And that's the East Midlands news. Now the weather from John Kettley.
Good evening. We've seen the pressure rise over the past couple of days. That's about to change now as this weather system rolls into the far northwest, bringing wind and rain across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland during Thursday. High pressure holding firm further south. Now we've got a lunar eclipse starting in about 18 minutes time. You don't get this every Preston Gill, so they're worth watching if you can. And it's in the north and west of the country where you're going to get the best view tonight. Now having said that, on the eastern side over East Anglia and the southeast, there is a break in the cloud, a very good break in that cloud, so you may well get a good view for the next couple of hours or so. But it's also leading to a touch of frost. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud across England, very gloomy conditions, very misty conditions too, with the odd patch of drizzle. Now the fog over Northern Ireland and Scotland will gradually thin out during the course of the night as the wind picks up, and there'll be outbreaks of rain turning up in the far northwest before the night's out. Just here and there a touch of frost tonight, but most places staying frost-free. Then tomorrow we'll find that band of cloud, wind and rain gradually making progress southwards across much of northern Britain, eventually turning up in the borders and Northern Ireland by early evening. Further south, though, again it's the same story as today. Rather gloomy conditions, certainly a lot of fog around on the higher ground, some fog patches developing on some lower ground as well, which will take some time to clear away, may well linger all day or at least just thin out. So it'll feel pretty cold and raw once again, temperatures probably no higher than 6 degrees. The best of the sunshine over in West Wales and southwest England, And here's that rain and strong winds with some gales moving southwards during the course of the afternoon. Looking on to Friday then, that's how the chart looks by then. The high pressure beginning to move away, so you'll see the needle twist back towards the left on your barometer, and you'll find rain gradually pushing southwards. To begin with though, you'll find some mist and fog in the south. That'll take some time to clear away as well, but eventually some rain turning up towards the end of the day. At the same time, brighter skies following down from the north. Not only brighter, it'll turn a bit colder once again. Some of the showers over northern Scotland turning a bit wintry. Not a bad day on Saturday, but again 1 or 2 mist and fog patches to clear away. A few showers up in the far north for the big wedding, but then eventually some rain turning up in the northwest.
The government's Green Paper has begun the debate on the future of the BBC.
I think the BBC has absolutely no right to charge a licence fee for Radio 1. Pop music doesn't need a licence fee.
Well, we're all paying a licence fee, so I think there should be a bit of everything for everybody, you know.
BBC's done okay in the past. If they start putting adverts on and they start messing about with it, cutting this and cutting that, the standard of the programmes are going to go down.
Extending choice. The BBC's contribution to the debate is now available from bookshops or at your local library. To get to the top,
I can do anything if I can just get a chance.
you need to start at the bottom.
I got a fantastic office, got a gorgeous secretary that works.
Sink or swim.
I'm gonna see that my husband gives you a leg up.
My husband. My uncle.
Your what? Christy Wills, how do you do?
She's the most incredible looking woman I've ever seen in my life.
Michael J. Fox shares the secret of his success. Next Wednesday at 9:30 on BBC1.
Well, our film this evening is a complex and gripping thriller from the creators of Columbo. Martin Sheen is caught up in murder and engages The Guardian in 50 minutes. First on one, and a little later than published, a desperate struggle for Michael Palin. Almost, but not quite, at the end of the road.